Now, what's relevant right now for the conversation we're having here is that provided just a little bit of lift that I needed to make a firm commitment to get off of the medication permanently. Now, that does not mean that I was home free from depression. I was not. And depression feelings still kept coming back. There were cycles of depression. There were down periods. There were periods when I come back to Rishikesh and spending time even with Eric, living with Eric, the very yogi who had given me this phenomenal experience. And I'd be walking outside in the sunlight, in the hot sunlight of Rishikesh at a fairly high altitude, absorbing all that beautiful sunlight, and I would still feel depressed. I had years left of work to go through to get to a place which is mostly depression-free, where I am today. But there was just enough lift, a general raising of my mood, raising of the baseline of my mood just enough that I had the confidence to tell myself that I'm not taking another single pill of antidepressant again for the rest of my life. It's not going to happen. Another thing that helped at that time me take that leap was Eric talking about nutrition. He was very interested in nutrition and how that helped with spiritual growth. And I will say that since then, I still understand the impact of nutrition, and it's something that I advocate and have researched and like to give over. I'm not quite to the same extent about every little detail that he was back then, but at that time, that perspective was helpful in helping me to make the transformative decision to get off of medication, because he talked about chemicals and their toxicity and how that wasn't going to be good for the spiritual process whatsoever. And myself, I don't like to, put an overemphasis on chemicals and toxicity. I don't want to be thinking about chemicals and toxicity. Those very thoughts are toxic. But I don't think anything could be more toxic, not in terms of a chemical perspective, but just in terms of the whole way of being, of having you kept in a state of dependency and essentially prolonging the depression. Nothing's more toxic unless you're going to kill yourself. There's nothing more emotionally toxic and undermining than taking medication because it's not a solution. It's prolonging a problem. Now, if we're going to stop medication, we need to make that productive. We have to have the mindset, the toughness and determination to deal with it. We need to have the tools to be constructive. We need to have game plans. If we have a game plan, we're not going to be derailed so easily, whether that's from an addiction to medication or an addiction to any other type of drug or activity that we may be engaging in. If we have a clear game plan and we're determined to really stick to that, that medication or that addiction is going to have a lot harder time pulling us back into that. So we need a game plan. We need strategies that work. We need processes that work. We need to see them working over time, and we need the determination. But we need to step away from the medication. We need to have enough confidence in the knowledge we have in the processes that we're going to employ, that we're going to get out of it. But we have to be prepared for a significant period of time where things are going to get worse before they get better. Because in my experience, things got much worse before they get better. When you get off of medication, it's been holding you up for so long, in addition to that baseline of depression you already had. So obviously, you're going to feel a lot worse for a long time after you stop the medication, but you need the determination to push through and keep going. You need to follow through with the exercises that we're going to look at, and with effective long-term processes, overall ways of retraining the mind, what you could call spiritual processes, but are really just ways of retuning how your mind works in an overall way to lift yourself out of the depression to a point where you don't come back. But you need to give yourself the space. You need to expect that you'll be feeling down for a few months. And for me, that was about 9 months. I know you might not want to hear that. You might want it to be a month, a couple weeks, a couple days. For me, it was about 9 months. Some really hard times. While that medication leaves your system, well, after it's left your system, you're feeling worse. You're feeling really down. And the interesting thing was that even when I was feeling so down, because I had left the medication, I knew that a lot of that down feeling wasn't because of the reality. It wasn't because of anything real. It was because of the depression and illness. Leaving the medication made it clear that that's what it was. It was depression as an illness, not anything else that was wrong. Now, there are a lot of things that were wrong in my life at that time, and still are, but the feeling and that pain that we're talking about doesn't directly come from those things. If you took away all those things, if all those things were perfect, if you had the perfect situation, those exact same feelings would resurface just as they are. Those horrible depressive feelings would be there even if you had all the money in the world, or with the perfect person that you could imagine, if your family situation was right, if your house situation was right, if you were living exactly where you want to live, if everything was exactly the way you wanted it to be, I can tell you with 100% certainty that those depressive feelings would still resurface, because they're deep, they're dark, they're with you. And unless we really get to the bottom and get rid of them, they're going to be there. They're going to be lurking, and they're going to come out. They're going to keep resurfacing. There's a lot of wealthy people in big, beautiful houses that have depression. And I've met some of them. Now, what is going to get rid of the depression is getting to the bottom of it, going down to its level, feeling it, and then using the techniques we're going to work with to slowly and steady pull our way out of it. And we're not going to get down to its level if we're on medication. If I was on what would always start as 25 or 50 milligrams of Zoloft and wind up being huge doses, 300 milligrams, 350 milligrams of Zoloft, coupled with what might start at 75 milligrams of Wellbutrin, going up to 100, 125, 150 milligrams of Wellbutrin. With those two medications having a multiplier effect, even getting 6 times as strong when they're combined together. If we had all of that in my system, there is no way that I would have been able to start getting to the bottom of those emotions, start feeling them, start letting them release, start working with them, start getting comfortable with them, because they wouldn't be presenting themselves in the same way. I wouldn't have the same chemistry. So we need to take a really hard look at where we are with this medication. And you need to come up with a plan, be smart about it. You can realize if it feels right for you, that it may be time to leave the medication. Or it may not be the right time for where you are right now. If you're at a really critical point in your career, so a really critical promotion that you want to get to, if you're about to get married to the love of your life in a few months, you might not want to get off of medication right now, right? We have to be smart about this. But if you're at a time in your life where things are perhaps relatively stable, if you've got a stable job with a little bit of breathing room, if you're in a stable relationship, or if things have just been continuously crappy for you and you don't see them getting much better without a change anyway, then think. Come up with a strategy to get off of medication. And you can do this with your psychologist. You can have psychologists there for support. You can have a psychiatrist there for support. If you're going to kill yourself, you can have a support team that you can go to put you on even a more fast-acting form of medication or antipsychotic, or throw you in a mental institution to prevent you from killing yourself. But you could come up with some plan to get yourself off of the medication.